in the upcoming Pytown neighborhood, and Fog Street Lawn Club gives you the experience of downtown Nashville, but you get to avoid the craziness of Broadway. Family friendly, great for all sports fans, great to go watch NHL and NBA playoff action, and their menu of British pub style food has plenty of must try items. Check out Happy Hour Monday through Thursday from 3 to 6 p.m., and I will see you up on the rooftop at Fog Street Lawn Club.
It is 1 o'clock. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. A blockbuster trade in the NFL as the Pittsburgh Steelers are sending wide receiver George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys, along with a 2026 sixth-round pick in exchange for a 2026 third-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick. Pickens, a 2022 second-round pick, amassed 59 catches for 900 yards and 3 touchdowns last season. He is headed into the final year of his rookie contract in 2025. In other NFL news, the Jags Jags are cutting wide receiver Gabe Davis. Davis signed a 3-year, $39 million contract last season with Jacksonville. He caught 20 passes for 239 yards and 2 touchdowns in his lone season as a Jaguar in 2024. In Titans news, according to Ian Rappaport, the Titans are re-signing defensive lineman James Lynch to a 1-year contract. Lynch played in all 17 games for the Titans in 2024, totaling 1 sack and 20 tackles. For your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to get in on the conversation, we'll be joined at 2:20 p.m. later today by Mike Herndon of PK.com. And he'll talk about his article that he wrote, New Era, New Identity, what 2025 NFL Draft says about the Titans' future. And looking... kind of today is kind of just like a kind of like a minor reset is how I kind of want to look at it. Is like all the moves are in the barn, like all the hay's in the barn. We know all the moves that have been made, except for like maybe minor moves that come later, like signings like today. James Lynch got signed, a defensive tackle that played for the Titans last year. You know, moves like that are still to be made, but the biggest moves, biggest splashes are probably over with. But there are 2 moves that happened today in the NFL that I feel kind of goes with what we were talking about yesterday when it comes to this next wave of player acquisition cycle and why the Titans may not be interested in some big names. One of them was the Steelers-Cowboys trade, where the Steelers received a 2026 third-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick from the Cowboys. In return, they sent to the Cowboys George Pickens, wide receiver, and a 2027 sixth-round pick. And I've seen, and it's not a lot of people, I think most people kind of understand why maybe the Titans didn't do this and all this kind of stuff. But, like, whenever a trade happens, you know fan bases are like, well, why didn't we trade for this person or blah, blah, blah. And George Pickens is kind of like, he's young, so he could be part of a rebuild. But I think that he has shown that his attitude and, I guess, on-field antics, I guess you would say, that kind of hurt the team, the Steelers and penalties and all these other situations, that he's not really a fit for what the Titans are looking for right now. If this was a team in a different phase of their roster building or phase of their team, I could see what the Titans maybe taking a risk on George Pickens. But in this current phase, doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of people saying that, about that. But I
You're
get
not
the fan
habitually
basis.
as online as I am.
Well,
to an unhealthy degree, I need to cut back on my screen time here.
I didn't see a lot of that. But I get it. He is a super talented player.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. And, yeah, you're right. This is not the time and the place to bring kind of, let's just say, I would say a disgruntled player when they don't get the ball. And you can see it out there. Sometimes he's loafing. You just don't want to set the standard then if you pay him. So, I wouldn't have approached him unless you have a veteran team who will be a piece to the puzzle, and he knows his role when he comes in. You're not going to get the ball all the time. We already have those pieces.
Yeah.
But if you want to come in and be part of this team, then absolutely. And that's called leadership. You know, some people talk about part of the team, but the actual leaders who make sure everybody's involved in the team, then it's then a team, and then they're leaders. So I think, that he was never going to be a fit here. But, boy, man, I love his athleticism, man. He is something special. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully I would call it he puts on temper tantrums out there. And, that just brings out a negative vibe. And when you're trying to grow a team, that you can't have that. You got to wait till you establish team and you got your leaders and they know how to keep him in check. So
right.
He's nowhere near that.
I mean, because really, if you really think about the Steelers who have that in spades, right? Mm-hmm. They have that from the coaching staff. They have that from all the players, the veteran players that they have. culture is not an issue for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they traded him. They got him out there as soon as they could. Now, they were holding out for a third-round pick because there were trade offers of a fourth-round pick, but they were looking to get rid of him. Now, it may not work.
What do you think about the value, though, there? I thought that was a little much for the Cowboys, and I only say that because his contract is up in a year, and then now they got to pay him or franchise him.
Well, and
so
guess
then
who
you may
his
get a
agent
one-year
is?
deal of you walk and you for a third-round pick. I don't know if I'm up for that. I don't know.
Well, guess who his agent is? David Mogoletta, who Jerry Jones at owners meeting because he also represents
Abdul
Micah
Carter.
Parsons.
Yeah, Micah Parsons. Yeah,
He represents Micah Parsons, who they have failed to reach an extension.
Yes.
Who's on the line?
He won't even say his name.
Won't say his name. Doesn't even know. Claims not to even know who he is, Blake.
He's gotten all his players. I think that's who Kevin Byard's with, too, as well. I may be wrong on checking that. But he's gotten all the guys the highest paid when they're free agents at their position. Multiple players.
You're right. To me, this doesn't make sense from the Cowboys unless you plan to do an extension. But you're going to do an extension with George Pickens that you just reacquired before Micah Parsons?
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
I have a best friend that is a Cowboys fan. I have not asked him about this today.
A lot of friends are Cowboys fans.
I haven't asked him about this today because I've been a little busy this morning. But I can only imagine it is just eye roll after eye roll. Now, listen, this may work in the short term.
Oh, yeah.
Because you do have Dak Prescott. You do have CeeDee Lamb. You do have an improved younger additions to the offensive line through the draft. And now you got George Pickens. It may work this year. I mean, the Cowboys aren't, I guess, they have leaders. I don't know. I wouldn't really know how strong of a leadership group this is, but I would say that Dak Prescott, a pretty good leader on that team and a guy that commands respect. So maybe this will be different than what it was for Pittsburgh, who had guys like Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett. I mean, Russell Wilson.
I'm betting it's going to be worse.
You think it could be worse because CeeDee Lamb's going to be getting all the attention?
I just think it's just a lot of those guys speak a lot there, and it's just there's so much attention there. I don't know, man. I just don't see. On the field, it may work out great because CeeDee Lamb gets double, especially when they get in special,
But you're right. If he doesn't get a new contract, this was all for nothing.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the same team that traded a fourth-round pick for Jonathan Mingo last year. They traded for Kenneth Murray this year. No offense to Kenneth Murray, but traded for Joe Milton, traded for Kyer. Here's who they traded for in this offseason alone, not including Jonathan Mingo at the trade deadline. George Pickens, Joe Milton, Kenneth Murray, and Kyer Elam. All four players coming from teams that just didn't want them. Not because
but I'm going to say they're all talented, though.
They
all got some issues.
I haven't seen Kyer Elam's talent come to fruition.
I mean, we know Milton can throw it to the moon.
Hey, Joe Milton, I'm going to say he has all the talent in the world because he secured the Tennessee Titans the first-round pick. So good. Thank you to him.
I always thought he was going to, I've said this numerous times, that he's going to be a better pro than actual college player. And that's kind of playing that way out. We shall see. If Dak gets hurt again, he gets out there, all eyeballs will be on him because the Cowboys are always going to be on national TV and they're going to be talked about. So we shall see if he's got the goods to, get his, game all in line to be ready to be a productive starter. And man,
then you got the head coach that's there, Brian Schottenheimer, and you're kind of like,
you never know. He may
never
be
know.
good.
Maybe he's this, drill sergeant or something or whatever. But I'm just like, man, this to me, again, sometimes it's kind of like the Browns when they do stuff. I'm
really
just like,
bad,
what are the Cowboys doing?
I never know what Jerry's doing.
Yeah.
But when things look really bad, sometimes it works itself out.
Yeah.
And it ends up being not as bad. They're probably really at the same spot that they were the year before with, different pieces. I didn't even know if the previous coach was going to work out for them, even though he had some belts on the wall there. It just, working for Jerry Jones and how he operates, you just never know who's really controlling the team.
Right.
And when I say that, I'm talking about even during game day. Like, somebody calling, hey, man, throw the search. I believe that.
Do you think he has a headset that maybe he knows when the cameras are coming on, or maybe he has someone that's on a headset in his suite, and he can be like, hey, make sure you tell them this. Like, it goes straight to the coaches.
I believe something like that going on. I have no proof of that. I just feel like it, man, because, Man, they every time it's just somebody pees down their pants, it's Dak or whoever in the playoffs. It doesn't matter.
I mean, this is a tough division that they're in already, right? Especially with the Commanders on the rise. The Giants, we'll see what they are. I mean, they improved their quarterback room, but how much is that improvement going to improve the win total? But like the Cowboys have kind of floated in the abyss. They had a pretty good draft class. I don't really hate it as much as maybe other people do, but they didn't really do much to improve the product. And I think George Pickens is an upgrade over, I think, their wide receiver too last year. My God, was it still Brandon Cooks last year? May still been Brandon Cooks or Michael Gallup. But
yeah.
I mean, obviously whoever it was not good enough for me to remember at this point in time. So like pairing George Pickens with CeeDee Lamb should work. It should provide you points. But when George Pickens is going up against maybe the more physical Eagles defensive backs, how is he going to handle that kind of pressure? Is he going to snap? Is he going to throw a temper tantrum when times are tough against the Eagles or when Dak's not feeding him the ball because he's feeding CeeDee Lamb? How is he going to act? And
all eyeballs are going to be on him multiple.
Primetime games. Thanksgiving games. All the games. All eyeballs will constantly be on him, especially in that market as well.
Yeah, and then if you lose, I mean, I think it's somewhat of a circus, and I think that's how they kind of operate, and it works for them at times, but sometimes it can go the whole other way, and I mean, you can't stop the free-for-all down. It's going to be tough. This is going to be interesting because, man, he is – man, he's talking about talented.
He's talented. I loved him in that draft class that he was in because that was the Burks draft class, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And so I really liked George Pickens coming out of college, but he had these same issues in college that he's having now. So this is not – these temper tantrums are not just because he became pro. These temper tantrums were there also in college.
Yeah, he was suspended for a game. I remember watching this game. He was standing on the sideline, I think, with his jersey on. And I don't even know why he was suspended. Probably something he did anyway. But anyway, he spit on the other guy. I mean, they got it, right? I mean, so I'm like, see, that's what I'm talking about. Like, why are you doing this stuff?
But I am a little sad, and they said this on the Buck Rising show, and I think this was Lucas. I am a little sad because we're not going to see George Pickens, DK Metcalf on the field at the same time. We're not, and those temper tantrums that those two can have, because they're both.
I never thought they were going to keep both. Once he signed Metcalf, I was like, there's no way the quarterback is going to go insane.
But then the possibility of having Aaron Rodgers added to that trio. Oh man, that would have been such must-see TV. Every week, all the press conferences.
That would have been.
When we come back, we're going to talk about the Jaguars' recently released wide receiver and why the Tennessee Titans should not think about pursuing him. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
Who dat?
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. And what's interesting today is that I was not really expecting this transaction to happen, but I also kind of forgot that he was even on the team. And that's why the Jaguars released earlier today wide receiver Gabe Davis, who had 2 years left on a 3-year contract.
He was there 1 year.
Yeah. He was there for 1 year. $25.5 million is remaining on his contract, including a fully guaranteed $11 million in 2025.
Oh, my.
So the move is likely a June 1st, post-June 1st designation, which splits up the $20.3 million in dead cap money, meaning they'll have $5.7 million will still count towards the cap this year, and then Gabe Davis will count $14.6 million against the cap next year. Now, what's interesting is, and this is kind of the point that I've seen Easton Freeze make and others of A to Z Sports, the $11 million owed to Gabe Davis in 2025 per his release is subject to offsets. So you could likely get Gabe Davis fairly cheap. Remember how Russell Wilson, after he got cut from the Broncos, signed with the Steelers last year for like $1 to $2 million, whatever the vet min was, because there were offsets. He was still going to get paid that $11 million or whatever. So if you were to sign Gabe Davis to a $2 million contract, he's still getting paid $9 million from the Jacksonville Jaguars. But here's the issue with this Gabe Davis fever dream that people are going in on. And like I said, Easton Freeze of A to Z Sports is like, we'll take a flyer on Gabe Davis. What's the hurt? What's the problem? Again, the Tennessee Titans are in rebuild mode. And my big thing is, after we talked yesterday, I kind of came to a new understanding or new way to look at things for the Tennessee Titans. Because like I've said, I've been wanting like Zadarius Smith. And you're like, well, I mean, he's fine, but you don't really need to spend the money right now to get him because you're in a rebuild mode. It's time to just establish what you got here with the guys you got. Not to say that he couldn't be a help or anything.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
It's just that, is it a want or a need? You know what I'm saying? Then that's kind of where it's at. And for me, you're looking at a wide receiver that can't catch, right? I mean, he had last year, his receiving catch percentage was 47.6. He caught 20 of 42 balls. Granted, he didn't, according to Pro Football Reference, he didn't drop any of them. I don't know how that happened, but they're not all off target, obviously, but he 20 of 42. 239 yards and 2 touchdowns through 10 games, 9 starts. That is insanely bad. Now, listen, he had success with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, he did.
He had drop issues there, but he had success. But you're talking about a guy that obviously played poorly last year, got into the fight on the sidelines with Trevor Lawrence constantly, and he's recovering from a torn meniscus in his knee. I understand that this is technically possibly low risk, but you're bringing in a guy who wants to be treated like a wide receiver 1 to possibly be wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, when you already got Van Jefferson, which Van Jefferson has had a similar-esque career to Gabe Davis. And you know me, I'm not the biggest Van Jefferson fan.
I don't know if they had Gabe Davis was pretty productive with the Bills.
But how much of that is Josh Allen?
Well, I can't say that. I was not watching the Bills, but the numbers are the numbers, and you're a numbers guy. It's not even in comparison. I mean, I can off the top of my head, Jefferson had 200-something yards last year?
Yeah.
Okay. That was his first year with the Steelers. The last year at Buffalo, because that's what you're comparing him to.
I think there's a couple of years in 2021 where he had like 802 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Has Van Jefferson ever had 800 yards? He did his first year with the Rams.
That's what I'm saying. With the Rams is what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, it's a little bit different. So, there might have been some issues there because before there were never any issues between him and Josh Allen. And when I say that, I'm talking about, on the sideline. Well, all we heard about was Diggs, correct? See, so maybe there was something to that. I always don't look at just one player. There's always two sides to a story. And we all know, in my mind, Trevor Lawrence hasn't lived up to the billing. We can blame it on what all you want to blame it on.
Oh, you know me.
But at the same time,
I ain't trying to make any excuses for Trevor
Lawrence. And
Lawrence.
then you say he had no drops, but there was 20 receptions or so that were. Hey,
I'll have to see what PFF says about his drops.
But what I can say, maybe he was a little. He got the money, felt the pressure, wasn't seeing the production, and he knew it was going to blame him. Now, new GM, new head coach. Naturally, they said, we'll take this and move on because, for one, he actually plays the same position as Travis Hunter. See, so you don't need him. And with the headache that you presume that he brought, I don't think he's a bad guy. That there wouldn't have just happened in one season. So I would say that he's probably going to, go be picked up. Like the Cowboys be in place, or, even if he's the third, fourth guy. I mean, or the Browns. The Browns, we could start naming teams, and he can go right in and kind of be the 2 or the 3 immediately.
That's why I also don't think he would come here, because I don't know if he would be the 2 or 3 immediately.
I would never envision him or any.
And that's what I'm
receiver.
specifically talking about is like here, and that's what Easton keeps talking about is trying to bring him here.
Nah,
and I'm like, no. I don't care how cheap it is, because I don't think that, again,
unless somebody gets injured.
Yeah, unless someone gets injured, I would then be willing. But to me, it's like you brought in specific people. We're going to be talking about this throughout the episode. We're going to talk about this with Mike Kernan, too. But you brought in, Brinker said they brought in a certain kind of person. They brought in people that are team first, team oriented. They love football and all this stuff. And I'm not saying Gabe Davis isn't those guys, but they also brought in guys that are dependable for the most part, that are available. Gabe Davis tore his meniscus. To me, that's not a guy that you necessarily need to bring in. Now, you may want to bring him in if you're a fan or something, but to me, I'm okay with how this wide receiver room looks this year. Mm-hmm. I think this year you built up a good wide receiver room that provides you a lot of complementary parts to each other, that provides you a lot of guys that Cam Ward can rely on and grow with. So to me, I look at it and I go, I know fans get so easily caught up when they see a named player get cut. And they're like, oh, we got to have him. It's like when everybody clamored for Golden Tate. Then they got Golden Tate, and he never made it off the practice squad here at the Tennessee Titans. And I'm not saying that he would never make it off the practice squad, but I don't think Gabe Davis is a plus add for this team.
No, I would look at it like
I would just pass.
Yeah, I would pass too. I think he would take away from reps from the kid from Stanford. So they're the same body type players. So no can do. Not unless somebody gets injured right now. So now, if you want to be a mentor type wide receiver, maybe I'd be open to that. And in your role would be reduced. Kind of like how Harry Douglas was at this last year with the Titans. Did he ever touch the field hardly? Not very much. Yeah, so that's kind of how I'll be looking at this here. And I don't think he's at that point of his career. He's still looking for, the gold mine and the big payday because he's still a young player and he's a big target. So, I don't know him personally or anything like that, but I never heard anything bad about him with the Bills, so I can't assume. And then being injured, you can get a torn meniscus any kind of way. I mean, so that's not a major injury. That can happen, just unfortunately happen after he signed a big contract. That's somewhat of a 6 to 8 week type injury at worst case scenario. So that's not a issue with me. It's just that this is not the time to be bringing a guy like that in here who still wants to be the dude when you're trying to develop people with mentor type receivers on the roster already. So nah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I don't know of any sideline antics or temper tantrums like he had in Jacksonville.
Right.
But I know with the Bills, but I know that he was very inconsistent as far as a week-to-week basis could be relied on. I know that they
just in this 1 year.
No. I'm talking about his Bills. Okay. We're talking about the Bills. Now, he also was very inconsistent this year too, but he was inconsistent from a week-to-week basis. Couldn't be relied on. Separation issues throughout his whole career so far, and a route running. I remember the Bills analysts that I follow on a couple of different platforms. They were always critiquing his route running and his, I guess, concentration during games. Now, it does not mean that, again, he has the talent, right? He has athletic gifts that very few people have, but he just had a bunch of inconsistencies with the Buffalo Bills. Now, he showed up in big moments, right? The games that everybody's watching, he showed up, but it was some of the games that not everybody was paying attention to if you weren't a Buffalo Bills fan, that you probably wouldn't have known some of these issues that lined up with his game.
Yeah, I mean, if you go watch the Bills play, he is a 2 or a 3. That's really what he is.
And he's really probably a 3, a big 3.
So, you had Diggs, and then he kind of became the 2 because he was always getting the one-on-one matchups. And if it's the same kid I can recall from Central Florida, he had all these same issues, but yet he still got drafted. And by the way, doesn't matter if it was Jacksonville, whoever, he still got paid. So obviously he's a productive player. He's just not the dude.
Yeah.
And so, you just kind of keep it moving, and you can find somebody and continue to develop some guys they already have on the roster that are younger players. And at the end of the day, I don't want to slight the guy about he's in the league, so we could talk about his drops, his route running. Everybody, as I said before, has some parts of their game that's not polished. But he is in the league, so let's not, this guy is a solid enough player to be in the league and actually be out there starting and be productive. So change of scenery probably wasn't good, and then the injuries and everything with Jacksonville. So let's see what he does this next year. You're not going to judge a guy based off of a 1-year window where things didn't go so well, bad team, drops, injury.
Mr. Keefe says he would be wide receiver 1 here, and I would like for Mr. Keefe to go check into a rehab facility.
He would be wide receiver 1
here, which is not the case whatsoever. But speaking of the Jaguars depth chart, after you get to Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter, and then Diami Brown, they have really questionable depth. And maybe this is one of those things where they approached him to take a pay cut. And we'll probably hear, hey, we need you to take a pay cut. Because after those 3 guys, Parker Washington is the most known name probably among fans.
I actually like him.
And I know you like Parker Washington because you talked about him before.
Yeah.
But behind after that is Austin Trammell, Joshua Cephas, David White, Lewis Reese-Zammit, Eli Pankel, J.J. Jones, Chandler Brayboy, Dorian Singer.
Stop making up names.
I'm not making them up. Cam Camper.
Jackson, stop making up names.
Cam Camper is one, and Darius Lassiter is the last. They have actually signed 6 undrafted free agents, and starting with Eli Pankel, the rest of those were all undrafted free agents.
Can you say that second to last name again?
Cam Camper. And that is a real name.
Who was a camper?
He was a camper. He's Mr. Camper's son. I do wonder, though, if this is maybe a long-term play for the Jaguars, because Liam Cohen is coming from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? That's where he just spent the last few years. They went wide receiver crazy the last 2 years in the draft, and they have currently on their roster Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, Trey Palmer, who they drafted a couple of years ago, Jalen McMillan, who they drafted last year. They signed Sterling Shepard, unrestricted free agent, drafted Tez Johnson, and signed Will Shepard, and they have a few other ones as well. I wonder if he's looking at that depth chart and thinking, okay, maybe with us being 5th in the waiver wire when cut down day comes, we'll scoop up some of these guys that maybe know my system.
Oh, that could be. Yeah. You just never know.
Never know. Maybe it's a long-term play. I don't know.
But there is something to that with knowing the player, actually what they can accomplish. And I thought they got depth because Evans is getting older and then Godwin's coming off an injury, correct? I think he had so it's a pretty serious injury. I think it was an ankle dislocation maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
So that made to cover themselves in case he's not up to speed. And if he's not, then some of those guys will get some of the reps.
Yeah. It's just, to me, it's like, Let Gabriel Davis go somewhere else. And that's just where I'm at. Is like, I would just rather stay away from these wide receivers that are left. I mean, if they signed Amari Cooper, I'm not going to complain. But even Amari Cooper was with the Bills last year, and you could tell it just wasn't working for them either. And like, I would just say, just let the current group roll with what you got. And I mean, obviously injuries aside, but you are looking at, I mean, a pretty, maybe not a proven wide receiver room. It's not a I guess top-heavy wide receiver room, but it's a wide receiver room enough for a point guard style offense, which I kind of feel like this is where they're going to be going with this. A bunch of versatile chess pieces, and they're going to distribute the ball to like Calvin Ridley, but they're also going to distribute the ball to Tyler Lockett. And then here's a play for Chimere DK, and here's a play for this, and here's a play for that. They're going to distribute the ball a lot more than what we probably have seen, because I think that's what they were trying to do last year, is distribute the ball. So to me, I look at that, and I look at, like, we got Michael C. brings this up too, and I just read Tampa Bay's depth chart, right? Green Bay drafted two wide receivers too, in an already young and crowded Green Bay wide receiver room. And I'm like, okay, well, if they cut some people, you're number one in the waiver wire priority. So if some of these teams are going to be cutting capable wide receivers that maybe can provide you back in depth better than what Gabe Davis is, and is a better fit for what this team is wanting to do in 2025 and beyond. And that ultimately is where I just don't think that George Pickens or Gabe Davis, the timeline just didn't match up for me to be interested in those particular players for this particular team.
No, I would agree with that. I think the Titans also think that way. So, yeah, I think now it's about fit more than anything now at this point in time, unless it's some really, really good player that may get cut, maybe during training camp or something for salary or something after June. You just never know. Maybe that's what they're expecting there at the pass rusher, too. I'd be a little more concerned on the pass rush.
Yeah, that's true.
This group that they have already, whether they're proven or not proven, I think they got a good group here and move forward. Don't go for the name guys at this point in time when you're trying to develop a young quarterback. Sometimes these receivers come in, and especially if they, got some belts on the wall and they're really good receivers, they kind of skew the quarterback a little bit. I would say Josh Allen and Diggs, that was a little bit of that. And him throwing him the ball, even though he pissed off that he wasn't throwing the ball. He's like, you're doubled. He's like, throw it to me anyway. And he's like, no, I'm going through my progression reads. And so that goes on all the time, especially when you get some, superstar type wide receiver. So I like where we're at. And you don't know who, to really focus on besides Ridley. And I think you said it best. He's going to be the star, and you work around him with all the other pieces. And then now you say, we shouldn't be doubling Ridley. Then next thing you know, Ridley's one of the fastest guys in the league and can run right by anybody.
Well, and I think Jim freaking Nance on the F&M Bank channel, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live brings up a great point right here. If we're not going to use what we drafted, why did we waste those two picks on wide receivers? Yeah. Let's not reach in free agency. And I think everybody is kind of – and I think what you said yesterday was such an eye-opening thing for me, is like, oh, yeah, I think we get lost and forget they're in a 2 to 3 year rebuild, and they're year one. They're establishing a particular way they want to do things in the locker room. Mm-hmm. They're establishing what they want to be as an identity, and thrusting in pieces that don't fit just because they have name value doesn't really help with what you're trying to accomplish this year. Now, in a couple of years, if this whole plan works, then yeah, sure. I would be more open to a George Pickens, or I'd be more open to a Gabe Davis, or this player or that player. It doesn't matter. It's just that right now they're not there. And I think yesterday I knew that in my heart, but I think it just caught up to the brain. Like, I knew that that's where they're at.
Fandom, because you want to see them have success, right. So you always want to look for a player who's proven in this league.
Yeah, you just don't want to have to suffer through the growing pains, but I think unfortunately fans are going to have to take their medicine.
Yeah, it's going to take, it's
going to be fun medicine, I think.
We're going to have to see the medicine at the pass rush, because we're going to have to see Femi and have to wait and see if he can actually be more in this first year than we expect, or Carter even to that point, and some of the veteran guys. So I'm interested to see how they look. Because, man, if they don't get pressure, man, it's going to be a long season if you don't get any pass rush.
They did the pay people thing last year, and we saw how all that money spent equated to 3 wins. Injuries happened. Fits weren't good. The locker room was kind of weird, it looked like, in some instances. And the way that they're talking now, it makes me think the locker room was in a weird state, a weird limbo, I guess you would say.
You know what? I hope Femi can turn into, if you guys remember, Arakpo.
Yes.
See, that's kind of the player some not a dominant, hey, he's a great passer, but you're going to get 9 to 10 sacks. I don't want that to happen like year 3. I'm hoping you start seeing it in this season. You start saying, okay, he gets 5 or 6 this season and becomes a very productive player, or after that, and the sky's the limit, and maybe even a higher ceiling than a rack pole. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and maybe that's what they're thinking. It dawned on me, because I'm like, who can he actually become? And then hopefully sooner than later, and I would say Rakpo was a very respected player in this league, a very good player. So I'm
and
hoping
he
we can see
helped
that.
During those Malarkey John Robinson eras, establish a culture.
I think that's what they're thinking.
I think you're spot on, and we're going to be talking about that with Mike Herndon of PK.com at 2:20. But also, there's an article in The Athletic that was put on my radar by people that were with the Titans that I think is something that Titans fans need to know. We'll talk more about that, and we'll get to what Jackson was trying to tell me as well. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here at 104.5 The Zone.
There are a lot of diagnoses out there, and there's a pill for everything. But not all diagnoses are accurate, and not all pills are good for you. Hey, it's Blaine Bishop. And when you get a diagnosis for European Auto Repair, get a second opinion before you make a major decision. And Eurofix is the home for second opinions. So before you spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on European vehicle repair from a diagnosis, go to Eurofix. It could not only save your vehicle's life, but could actually save you from a lot of stress that can ruin your freaking weekend. And life's too short to get stressed out and angry. So be happy and go to Eurofix. And at Eurofix, you get a free 15-minute no-rent inspection with an estimate at every visit, and not high-pressure sales tactics. They get a 3-year nationwide warranty and a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And at Eurofix, you never pay dealer pricing. And it's been family-owned for 26 years, located all over the state of Tennessee in Franklin, Hundred Oaks, Murfreesboro, Belmead, and now Mount Juliet. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX, or you can visit them online at myEurofix.com. That's myEurofix.com. Always done, Blaine.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. And Jackson, before we went to break, we were talking about Brian Arakpo, Femi Oladejo, and all that kind of stuff. And you flashed your microphone as a signal that you wanted to speak. And now you flashed your microphone wanting to speak after you told me we had to go to break. So, you got to make up your mind.
I'm indecisive, but I did want to say I think Brian Arakpo, that would be an excellent second-round pick for the Titans.
That would be true. Because wasn't Brian Arakpo a first-round pick?
Yeah, he was a first-round pick.
Yeah. And he got 11 sacks in his first season, so let's temper those expectations. But the long-term ramifications of a player like Brian Arakpo would be a fantastic turn of events for Femi Oladejo.
Yeah, and I think I only thought of that because his body build and kind of how he plays, it reminds me a little bit of Arakpo.
I can see
We're
that.
Projecting what he could be when we don't know if he could even reach to that level.
Right.
But that's kind of, I think, what they're expecting, because I think he was kind of somewhat of a wall rusher there. I mean, he went to Texas, so he was always a pass rusher. So maybe he's going to be a late transition guy that ends up being really good. And if they believe that they have time, I know the fans won't be patient,
right.
But if the owner can stay patient, now here's the hard part, which we all get connected to, myself included, is once you see them win a game that they're probably not supposed to win, you start raising the expectations and think you're going to see that kind of level of play game in and game out, and it kind of doesn't happen when you're a young team because they're going to go through somewhat of a roller coaster ride, and you better get on for the ride, fans, because it's going to be a roller coaster ride. There's going to be times they're going to look really good, and there's going to be times they don't. So just be ready, prepared. But then lastly is the owner must be prepared for this, because she could say, I'm all in on it until they win a big game, and let's say they go beat, they don't play the Eagles, I don't think, but let's say they beat the Eagles. And then all of a sudden, whoop, we ready. And then they go
remember that
lose
it's like that Texans
to the Jaguars.
game. Everybody's crying in the locker room.
So you just got to be ready. We're going to have some inconsistency, and no different than me when I was a rookie and inconsistent play and trying to figure it all out to being a young team. So hopefully he can, get there sooner or later. Hopefully some of these vets can help him get there. Femi.
Blaine, I wanted to ask you, because you were on some younger teams in the mid-'90s of the Oilers. What is kind of the mentality of that? You're going through that roller coaster ride on the team side of things.
Well, it's funny because you believe as an athlete that you can win every game. So we really thought we were really good. It's just that next thing you know, we're always 8-8. And we're, losing close games. So we realized that, okay, we can't close. Why is that? Is it something that we're doing or repressing, or was it a play call? Was it a missed field goal? So you're at the same time, an athlete is always believing that the team is good enough, because you have to believe that. I mean, and you do really believe it. And you realize that, you just don't have enough. Really, at the end of the day, you don't have enough talent. And sometimes players, as a team can play above their talent level, and then sometimes they play below. And that's why you have to have a good little mix of veterans to young guys, because at the same time, you got to show some of the guys what to do. And then at the same time, they got to push you too, because of their athleticism. They're still young and youthful. So that's finally what came together and I didn't think anything different in the 99 season when we went 13-3 and we went to the Super Bowl compared to the other teams. Is only person that was different was the Freak.
Yeah.
That was it. See, so it was the final piece to the puzzle. So, and that's what we have to, go through. Hopefully some of those kind of seasons where, you kind of live up to it and you believe they're going to be a playoff team, but they always come up short.
So,
good question, though.
104.5 The Zone draft expert Stoney Keeley, co-host of Football Nova Airports, texted me this morning, Blaine.
Oh.
And he said, "Dog, I watched Femi versus Indiana, and now I'm pissed off." And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, he just looks like a baby deer walking for the first time. Yeah. And I asked, I said, "What week was Indiana?" Because and then I said, "Well, he better be a darn good leader." I said the other word. And it was week 2, I think, is what Stoney said.
Oh.
Now, week 2, I said, "Well, I think he was a weak side linebacker then." And he goes, "Well, they're switching him back and forth. So this is his first game where he's getting a taste of both things."
Wow.
And he says, week 2, I think, basing my film piece for next week on your exercise of how did he look early versus how he looked late. That's for stackingtheinbox.com. And he goes, he just looks lost in all capital letters sometimes, standing still and looking around like he's not really sure of what to do. And that's something that we've talked about. Like he's got that linebacker mentality at edge, and that's not really what you need technically at edge.
It's about go.
Yeah, it's go. He goes, they were switching him back and forth. Also took more drives off than I would have thought, which I thought was an interesting thing. It's easy to see why they switched him. Is it crazy to be concerned about that? I think he's all effort and no plan right now. But wouldn't you rather have all effort right now? I mean, not in the face of having effort and production
Right.
and stuff, but like whether you would rather have a guy with all effort than a guy that's maybe very sound that doesn't give it his all every time.
Well, yeah, because, at some point, you got to turn up the engine. Sometimes these elite level athletes, they don't have that engine turned all the way up, and you wonder why. That you don't want to hold him back. He's full speed ahead. So that first game, I'm sure he was a little bit lost, unsure if he really wanted to probably even play the position. He was doing it for the team's sake, and then end up realizing this is maybe the best thing for him as the time went on, as the games went on throughout the season. His effort is not to be denied. I mean, he's gonna give that. It's now, can he understand how to rush, how to counter move, and without hesitation, because that's what you don't want, and you don't want a guy out there not sure. He's just got to go, and eventually he got there by the end of the season. So I see the upside. I just didn't know that the Titans were in a position in the second round that should be an impactful player immediately.
Yeah.
If he can actually do that this season, or will it take him half of a season to get there?
Like I kind of put it with Stoney this morning. Right now, he's edge 4, and I have a hard time seeing him move up the depth chart quickly. Right. With guys like Princely Umanmielen and Landon Jackson, who went after him, those two guys, I could see those guys being edge 2 fairly quickly.
Immediately. But do they have more upside than him, though?
And probably not. And then, but then I look at a guy like Mike Green. I was like, well, if they would have drafted Mike Green, he would have been their best edge rusher right from the get-go. Right when he was drafted day 1, he's their best edge rusher.
But they didn't want all the off-the-field issues.
Yeah, and now the Ravens did a bunch of research on, because, like I said, he was one of the top-rated prospects going into the season. So they knew they liked Mike Green going into this college season. And they spent from September to the draft interviewing like over 70 people about Mike Green. So they became super comfortable. And sometimes you got to put in that extra work on some of these prospects, but they were super comfortable with where he fell and super comfortable enough taking him. And that's probably going to make everybody else look silly in a few years.
Well, typically on defense with the Ravens, they always take a little bit of risk for defenders.
And they're a roster that can afford to take a little bit of risk.
Yes. Yep.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about Femi Oladejo, the pick around Femi Oladejo, and how it relates to what Mike Berganzi said this morning on Ramon Kayla Will about culture and conviction. Good job. And how it relates to Celtics head coach Brad Stevens, and how it involves athletic article talking about his Butler days, what he's looking for in establishing a culture and building a roster. It's really good stuff. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
I threw it away.
It is 2:01. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Jackson Williams. A blockbuster trade in the NFL as the Pittsburgh Steelers are sending wide receiver George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys along with a 2026 sixth-round pick in exchange for a 2026 third-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick. Pickens, a 2022 second-round pick, amassed 59 catches for 900 yards and 3 touchdowns last season. He is headed into the final year of his rookie contract in 2025. In other NFL news, the Jags are cutting wide receiver Gabe Davis. Davis signed a 3-year, $39 million contract last season. He caught 20 passes for 239 yards and 2 touchdowns in his lone season as a Jaguar in 2024. In Titans news, according to Ian Rappaport, the Titans are re-signing defensive lineman James Lynch to a 1-year contract. Lynch played in all 17 games for the Titans in 2024, totaling 1 sack and 20 tackles. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 of Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. Of course, Mike Herndon will join us from PK.com coming up at 2:20 p.m. Talk about the article that he wrote about the new era of the Tennessee Titans. And I kind of want to lead into that with this article that I was read from or given to from The Athletic. And it came from some people inside the Titans building. And the message that was forwarded to me that said, if you read this, you'll understand better what we're trying to accomplish this year and what they're trying to lay the foundation of. And it's an article from May 5th, 2025 over at theathletic.com by Jay King called How Brad Stevens' Butler Days Provided Blueprint to Build the Boston Celtics into Champions. And it details essentially what they were looking for in their recruits at Butler and how that translated to him at the pros. When he first got there, he made all these trades and tried to get in people that fit what he was trying to establish in Butler. And of course, has led to a NBA championship and one of the better rosters top to bottom in the NBA. And it starts off with telling a story about Brad Stevens going to see Ronald Nored's high school basketball game. And he's wondering to himself, why am I going to watch a kid that can't dribble, he can't shoot, and he can barely pass? And that's his quote. And he said, Stevens trusted the coach down at the Homewood High School, who stressed that Nored would fit well at Butler because Stevens has heard all about Nored's top-notch leadership, but he did still have questions about the game. So they went and watched the film. They were kind of wondering, like, I don't know about this guy. He's like, why am I doing this? And then at the end of it, he saw that Nored defended, he competed, and as importantly as anything else, he had a presence on the court and in the huddles. He lifted his teammates' energy. He prioritized only what was best for the team. And so Steven said, yes, that's what we need. And I think this goes into what Mike Berganzi said this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will, where he talked about team first guys, having conviction, loving the grind of that is the football season and practices and getting better at their craft. And I looked at this and I go, yeah, this all fits. This all makes sense. And I was talking with Mike Herndon, texting with him, and I said, I'm not as anti this draft class as I have been some other draft classes where there are reaches, because there are reaches with Chimere DK. There are reaches with we're just talking about Femi Oladejo. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were reaches, but I'm not upset because at least I understand the plan. I see the vision. Normally, when you see them trade up for Des Fitzpatrick, you're wondering, like, what the heck are they thinking? They drafted Monty Rice how high? Like there's just no plan, it felt like, with some of those decisions. And here, I feel that there's a plan. This kind of helped lead us to that. But we're talking about a guy that couldn't pass, right? This is what he said. He couldn't pass, couldn't dribble, can't shoot. But he ended up, because of how he was able to play the game and how he competed and put the team first, this kid ended up being good enough to start every game of his freshman season, lead the team to back-to-back appearances in the national championship game, finished his career in a tie for Butler's all-time steals record and ranked second in school history in assists, and he won the Horizon League Defensive Player of the Year twice. He elevated the program. A guy with no production in high school, but he elevated because he put the team first. He worked hard. What he did well was a complementary piece to the team. And I think that's what this draft class is filled with outside of Cam Ward, are complementary pieces and players to put the team first.
Well, first and foremost,
I know that was a lot. I'm sorry.
Not to be, I don't need to read an article. I've been saying this the whole time.
Right.
This is their foundational piece because I understand how valuable those players are. You can't. Everybody's not going to be a superstar, and you're not going to be able to build a team that way initially. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't talk about our 99. We had Josh Evans, Joe Salavea, Jason Fisk. Do you remember any of these guys? Probably not. Kenny Holmes. So we had some really good players who are really good pieces to the foundation of what we needed. Yeah, we had all those pieces. And guess what? They were all on the 8-8 teams. They grinded. They knew what it was like to not win and lose those close games. And so we kept working until they got the pieces that were needed to kind of take us over the top with some great financial pieces, or great star players in Samari Rowe, Javon Curse, and we can go on. So with Eddie George and McNair. So I think that's how you start, because you got to, get in the right places next year when they draft. Guess where they'll be? Guess what? They may be able to take the best player available at any position. Hopefully that will probably be pass rusher or defense, or a wide receiver. You just don't know. They are building good quality players with that, and then hopefully they have the patience, and the fans too, by the way, to wait to see that happen over a 2 or 3 year window span, and the owner, of course. So that's the hard part. And I get it from fans because they want to win now, and they want to believe that their team is always in the hunt. And trust me, the players are going to believe that they can win those games. Just like I just said, when we were 8-8, I always thought we were better than that. I always thought we could win more games. So,
try telling Cam Ward that he's not going to be able to win a game.
Right, exactly. See, that's what I'm getting at. So I think he brings a positivity, hearing that he is always positive, even in a loss. That's going to be really interesting when Debbie Downer, and can't wait till Tuesday, when he is the reason why they actually lost the game in his mind.
Yeah.
And he threw the pick that kept him from winning the game, and it, that sealed the game for the other team. That's going to happen. And that's why I think responding to failure is ultimately, as an athlete, the true test of who you are, because that's what will be tested when you get in the National Football League. All these players were great players in college. But when you get tested and you fail, how do you respond? And that will be the telling tape. And that's what I kept saying about Will Levis. I didn't want them to bench him. I wanted to see how he responded, because this was, with the media attention that the NFL brings, this is nothing like college when you threw that interception. Everybody forgets because you're still the best player on the team. Well, here in the NFL, they will point fingers and say, you are the reason why we lost. How will you respond? See, so that will then tell you if he has the makeup of being a really good quarterback in this league.
And what was interesting about this morning, because you were talking about how do you handle it in the face of adversity, one of the key words that he's used, Mike Bergonzi, which is one of the words that they used last year as their team motto, there you go, was resiliency. He wanted to find players that proved that they were resilient. Now, what's interesting about this piece that I'm referencing on The Athletic, he said that typically they sought players from winning programs willing to put the team above the individual success. But they weren't just evaluating the players' physical gifts or basketball IQ. They observed how players handled themselves in huddles, how they dealt with problems on the court, because it's obviously basketball, and how they behaved when they were on the bench or in foul trouble. And I think
nobody in the media can relate to this, by the way.
Right.
Because you're only thinking about yourself.
Yeah.
See? Where in the sports, this is the difference. This is why the players need to understand where the media is coming from to the players, that everything is built around team. So they don't understand it, where you don't have to answer to anybody else if you're in the media and you're writing articles and you just want to get it from your point of view. Well, it doesn't matter what your point of view is when you're playing a team sport. You got to do what helps everybody.
Yeah.
See, and sometimes that's a sacrifice even of your talents.
Yeah. Because it's all about, did they fit the team concept? Are you a competitor? Do you care about winning? Are you a great teammate? How did they act when they weren't playing well or when things weren't going well for them? All things that we have talked about on the show, but you have specifically brought up that people in the media and fans don't understand without having lived it. I mean, and again,
Well,
I know there are people that play high school sports and stuff like that. I'm not trying to demean people that play. I played a high school team sport, but it's a different environment and a pro environment. It's a different environment at college.
Well, I think
than
they
it
get
is in
the
high
team
school.
concept
You're
because
right.
you don't have to have the most talented team. You still could win state and be one of the best players in the state and not even be a Division I player. So that's kind of not what I'm saying here. It's what I'm getting at is if you don't buy into the team concept and be able to have all these traits that they're looking for in players, you won't be successful in the league. So it starts there first, and then you'll probably potentially have a chance to be a good player.
Yeah.
A good player means you're a starter. Maybe sometimes may even be you're just a role player. And that don't mean you won't still have a long career. Some of it may mean you're the superstar. It just depends on really your position, how much impact you can say. I could say this. I was in, me personally, I was in a defensive scheme that I did not want to be in. I never wanted to be in the 46 defense where now I'm half the time linebacker, half the time nickel, half the time safety. I never wanted to be in something like that. So, hey, but guess what? It put me in this space and I embraced it for the team and the coaches who thought that's would be best. And then voila, boom, it was. So see, everybody is a superstar, but you got to relish your role and sometimes embrace it, and you will believe that you will get your opportunity when time permits. That's all you can do.
When we come back, we'll talk about the new era and new identity of the Tennessee Titans and what the draft says about that with Mike Herndon of PK.com. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045 is the number. We're going to go to Mike Herndon of PK.com, who wrote an article. New era, new identity, what 2025 NFL draft says about the Titans' future. It's a great read. It felt like I was reading a transcript from a Cover 2 episode, because there was almost everything that we have talked about and agreed on this show. But I want to start, Mike, with this. When I saw Gunnar Helm flash up on my screen as a Tennessee Titans draft pick, I sighed. I said, oh, this is awful. And everybody's like, well, why is this awful? Is he a bad player? I said, no. This is awful because I know that Justin Graver and Mike Herndon, who are both UT Longhorn fans, will continually and constantly say, hook him whenever he scores a touchdown. How many hook 'em tweets have you put out on Twitter about Gunnar Helm?
I mean, specifically about Gunnar Helm, I think one, maybe two so far, but I'm keeping plenty in the chamber. I mean, it's definitely going to I think there's going to be plenty of those coming.
Now, you've been a big Josh Wiley fan in the past. On F Words, we were all three, me, you, and Stoney, Josh Wiley fans. That obviously bit us in the butt this year. Where are we at on Gunnar Helm tight end 1 propaganda? Are you pushing that? Because I kind of believe that Gunnar Helm will end up being tight end 1 sooner rather than later.
You know, I would imagine Chig probably gets the nod for the first little bit, just veteran status, you know, that kind of thing. But I think Helm, by the end of the year, may be their most productive tight end from a pass-catching standpoint. I mean, he's very talented, and I think Cam Ward's going to love the way that he plays football and the way that he sees the game through a quarterback's eyes, too.
With Gunnar Helm, what are the Tennessee Titans getting from what he was in Texas that can translate over to the Tennessee Titans offense?
He's a big guy. I mean, 6'5", pretty good wingspan, and he's got the surest set of hands of just about anybody in the draft. And if you want to talk about a classic NFL tight end as far as just catches everything, you know, can go post guys up. There's some great clips of him from plays he made at Texas this last year of just Quinn Ewers throwing up jump balls, whether it be on the sidelines or in the end zones, and just letting Helm go up and get them. And he's very good at that. He understands how to use his body. He understands how to position himself and use that frame to shield off defenders. And then he's a contested catch-making machine. And then there's just the feel for the game aspect. You know, he's not a burner. You know, I think his combine time was probably worse athletically than what he really is. From a speed standpoint, I think he had an ankle injury during that combine performance. Not to make excuses for my Longhorn friend there, but I think he's a better athlete than what he probably tested as, and but ultimately the biggest thing is feel for the game and ability to catch in traffic.
Well, when you're looking at this entire draft class, we were talking, you know, just the other day about how I'm not crashing out as much as I usually am on some of these reaches because I understand the vision, I understand the plan. What was your biggest takeaway from this draft class in who these players are and what they represent to the future of the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, it certainly feels like a foundational class in the sense of they're getting guys that fit their vision of what they want this team to be moving forward. And you know, I mean, frankly, the slate is about as blank as it could be for an NFL team. You don't have a lot of guys that are holding spots on this roster that you feel like are going to be here in 3 or 4 years, most likely. So this has a chance to be a class that I think sets the tone. And I think with that, they made a pretty clear emphasis on character, football character, guys that work hard, do the right things on and off the field, and then and leaders to go along with that. And then also traits. You know, this was not a go out and sort by, you know, who had the most receiving yards, draft that guy kind of draft class. This was more of looking at who these players can be as pros rather than who they were as college athletes. I think those are the two things that jumped out to me the most.
We're on the phone with Mike Herndon. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Herndon, SK1 on Twitter. And then, of course, we're talking about his article over at PK.com. New era, new identity, what 2025 NFL draft says about the Titans' future.
Well, let's start off with a guy who wasn't drafted, that's Restrepo. What do you think his odds are on making the team?
I think it's going to be competitive at the bottom of the receiver group. I mean, say what you want about, Traylon Burks and guys like that. But I think that Bryce Oliver, Traylon Burks, who knows what happens with Van Jefferson. I could see him being a starter, or I could see him having, being a late cut guy too. So I think it's going to be competitive at the bottom of the depth chart for receiver. I see them probably keeping at least 6, maybe 7. Colton Dowell's another guy that's going to be in that group. But Restrepo, I think he's talented. I was a big fan of his as a potential draft player. And I think if you look at all the production he had at Miami, which was not just with Cam Ward. He had 1,000 yards with Cam Ward, but he also had 1,000 yards the year before as well. So he's put up too much production. And just has that ability to get open, that feel for the game, kind of like what I talked about with Gunnar Helm. I think he just has that knack in that feel. Also a great hands guy, trustworthy catcher of the football. And he's the kind of guy that quarterbacks like to throw it to, because he knows how to get open. He's going to feel that soft spot in the coverage and get there and present himself as a target. So I think what he brings to the game from that standpoint gives him a real shot to make the roster, because the Titans don't have a ton of guys like that on this current wide receiver list that they've got going into camp.
I know a lot of fans are talking about this Gabe Davis kid here from Jacksonville and Buffalo. Are you even interested in him for the Titans?
Not particularly. I think there's a reason he got cut, and Jacksonville paid a lot of money to cut him. And I mean, he kind of doesn't really fit the mold of what the Titans seem to be after at wide receiver, frankly. And if you're looking at this team, I'd rather them give some of the young guys that they just invested in, like DK and A.M. Minor, a chance to get into the rotation rather than burying them behind another guy that, has been cast off from 2 teams in the last 2 years now.
I guess we have to talk about Cam Ward. And, I've seen numerous times Brian Callahan, the head coach there, said we're going to develop the offense around Ward's skill set. And, I mean, I'm trying to wonder, what proof do we have that he's actually ever done that? I know you keep bringing up Joe Burrow, but he was not the play caller and not the guy developing the game plans. He was just relaying game plans. So kind of explain to me, why do you believe that he can be the guy to develop Ward around and the offense around him?
Yeah, it's a fair point. Zach Taylor should get due credit. It was not all Brian Callahan molding that offense around Joe Burrow. But I do think that that's relevant experience in the fact that he was in the room. He saw, how they went about it. He certainly was a part of the brain trust and the discussions of how they were going to build that offense, in borrowing some of those concepts from LSU and things like that, the Bengals were so widely praised for in their development of Joe Burrow. And it makes a lot of sense for them to try to copy-paste that idea to, Cam Ward in this rookie season. I mean, because, look, all players have their preferences, right? I mean, some players see a certain play better than others, or just have a better feel for it. And Cam Ward's talked about, switch verts and forward verticals, and that's kind of a theme of that's his favorite play. And it would be foolish of Brian Callahan or any coach, frankly, to say, no, I know you love running that. I know you're really good at executing it, but I have to run my system. I think that's an arrogant approach to coaching, to not take into account, especially your quarterback. And your quarterback's got to be bought into whatever your plan is. And if you have to give him some of his favorite bells and whistles in exchange for him, being open-minded about adopting some of yours, I think that's a give and take you have to make as a play caller.
If Cam Ward looks somewhat similar to Will Levis as well as Mason Rudolph this upcoming season, what would be your viewpoint at season's end if Cam Ward looked exactly as though they looked?
They'll be looking for a new coach. I think that's, I don't expect that to be the case. I think Cam Ward's a better quarterback prospect than Levis, and certainly way more talented than Rudolph. But if the results are similar, especially given the investment in the offensive line, and I know the rug has kind of been pulled out from Titans fans the last couple off seasons on the offensive line with various investments and whatnot. But I feel differently about this group than I have each of the last two off seasons. That this is going to be a competent offensive line. It may not be the best offensive line in the NFL, but it's not going to be Nicholas Petit-Frere. There are adults in the room, at that offensive line group now, and I think they're going to give him enough time to be able to at least make plays. And this is a passable receiver room. It's not a great receiver room. It's not even probably top half of the NFL, but it's passable. There's no reason personnel-wise that Cam Ward should not have, a performance, a rookie season as far as his specific performance, maybe not team success, that guys like Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Drake May even showed flashes, did last year. I mean, there's just no reason that he should not be able to do that, given the support around him. And if he doesn't, I think the blame should fall squarely on Brian Callahan.
There you have it, Mike Herndon.
Mike, with the picks of Femi Oladejo, it just is like they kind of went with traits over production. I think someone in the chat had said it best. Femi had the traits of a first rounder, but the production of a fourth rounder. Why do you think they went with someone like Femi Oladejo, who is new to the position, and chose his traits over production?
It's an interesting question because, obviously they could use instant impact at that edge rusher position, right? And I don't think Femi Oladejo is most likely to be the best instant pass rusher that they could have brought in for 2025 out of the group that was available at that pick. However, I think what it tells me is they are not looking at this as a 2025 selection. This is an investment in the future, and they think that the upside with Femi Oladejo is greater than the upside that some of those other edge rushers at 52 would have brought as far as year 2, year 3, year 4, when they expect to be more competitive. I think this draft class aligned with a lot of their words this offseason, which I appreciate. That they understand that this is going to take some time. This is not going to be a microwave results kind of situation in Tennessee. This is not going to be Washington, most likely, although I don't know that that's necessarily out of the question, but that's not the expectation. They're building this thing for the long haul, and I think Oladejo, in their view, has more upside as a long-term project. And look, he showed some serious flashes. There are some things to like about his tape, especially for a guy being so raw at that position, that you think, hey, if he's coachable, which by all reports he is, and if he's got the athletic ability, which he certainly does, we can get more out of him than what he showed at UCLA playing, basically 7 games at the position.
Do you have confidence that this defensive staff can be that? I mean, they didn't really have much of a pass rush last year, and the way that they're going, you wrote about it, but the way they're moving towards bigger bodies at the edge, I don't see a lot of pass rush upside with this group. So it's up to the staff and up to the players to carry out what the staff has decided to do in practice and do in game planning and all that kind of stuff. Do you have faith in this defensive staff? I mean, I know you like Denard Wilson, but, Ben Bloom, who's going to be pretty responsible for the development of Femi Oladejo and this pass rush group. I mean, how much faith do you have in this defensive staff?
Not a ton. They've got to show it. It's not like Ben Bloom, is the Bill Callahan of outside linebacker coaches. So I think they've certainly got to show their worth in bringing a guy like that along. But I do think that there's something to, look, say what you want about Ben Bloom. He's a professional coach. Femi Oladejo is going to have time to commit to purely learning how to be a pass rusher, not, going to class and not spending half his time at outside off-ball linebacker. He's going to have more time to dedicate to it. And I think their idea is that there's just some untapped potential there. And I do like the fact that they're going in this direction of heavier or players that play with heavier hands at that outside linebacker position. Because, they had Arden Key, they had, and they still have Arden Key, but they had Arden Key and Harold Landry as the primary players out there this past year. And those guys are just, mostly finesse rushers. Key has a little bit of a bull rush, but it's certainly not an A-plus kind of level rush for him. And Landry had no bull rush. Yeah, he was all finesse, all running around guys, not through them. And I think this is something that Robert Mays of The Athletic has kind of been on lately, and it's something that I've kind of gotten on board with, is that you just can't play that way in the NFL anymore. These tackles are too athletic, and they know how to just run guys past the quarterback. If that is your only move, even if you're really good at it, you just limit your effectiveness versus a guy that can push the pocket and create disruption that way. So I like that they're going in this Draymond Jones, Femi Oladejo mold with heavier hands, guys that are going to get push even if they don't necessarily get pressure. Because I do think push matters, and I think they've got a defensive line that can do that a little bit now.
So when you look at this staff, you look at this draft, you look at what they did in the offseason, we've heard that it's a 2 or 3 year rebuild. It's patience over panic. We've heard that the owner, Amy Adams Strunk, is on board with this plan of patience over panic. Do you think that maybe this coaching staff is a little safer than we initially thought going into the offseason? Because I know that you've had your issues with Brian Callahan and Rand Carthon. Rand Carthon obviously gone, but I know you've had a wavering faith in Brian Callahan as a head coach. So do you think that this development class that is a foundational class to build a culture, do you think that means that Brian Callahan's a little bit safer than we expected?
I don't know, because I still think part of my issue with Callahan last year, and it will be my issue with him this year as well if this year goes the same way, was that I did not feel that the team got better as the year went on. And I think that's a trait of good teams for the most part is even if a team is not super talented and not competing for a division title, a well-coached team improves over the course of the season as they work, as they find angles to kind of better themselves against their competition. And I just did not see that, not to mention all it just felt like there was some chaos at times between special teams and just a lack of, attention to detail. But I think that also could just be, look, as a first-year coach with 3 first-time, coordinators that are leading the charge there, and they had veteran assistants underneath them, but there's nothing that prepared those guys for the game day experience of, hey, you've got to call a play, every 30 seconds here, and can you keep up with the pace of the game while still managing personnel and everything else like that? And it is something that I think people get better at over time, and you would hope that Callahan and his staff show meaningful steps this year. If they don't, and if this team is similarly bad, I think they do have to cut ties, as much as it will be painful to start Cam Ward on the same track again with, a coach getting fired after his first year, and then, you start a new system and a new relationship. You don't want to go that route, but at some point, if they aren't showing signs of improvement, you have to. And so it doesn't have to mean that they win 8 games or 9 games or make the playoffs or whatever, but they have to show improvement between, the end of last year and the end of next year. And as long as they're heading in the right direction, even if they start 0-6 and then they finish, whatever the rest of the game should be, 6-5 or whatever, and it's still 6-11, but you finish strong and you showed progress, I think that keeps them safe. But we just need to see that.
I guess lastly, going out the back door, retired NFL jersey numbers. What are your thoughts on that?
I really love the Cowboys 88 thing. The fact that it's a legacy number for them that kind of gets handed down to special players that come in. And I think that keeps the players' memory alive better than hanging it in the rafters and never seeing it again. Because my personal opinion, every time I see 88, I think of Drew Pearson, I think of Michael Irvin, I think of Dez Bryant while I'm watching CeeDee Lamb. And I think of how cool that number is and what a special honor that is. And I love the idea of Cam Ward wearing number 1, and then every time we see him on the field, if he's successful here, we think about Warren Moon and that kind of legacy of that Oilers Titans franchise at that point. I love that, and I'm a big fan of Moon allowing Ward to kind of take that mantle from him.
Well, Mike, we appreciate your time today, and you can go read Mike Herndon over at PK.com, where his article talking about what the Tennessee Titans draft means for the Titans' future. It's a great read. We didn't get to hit on everything in there, so we left a little meat on the bones for some readers over there. So, Mike, prediction for how long this Cam Ward versus Will Levis battle is going to last?
Oh, gosh. 1 week into training camp.
Love it.
My final answer.
All right, Mike. We'll talk to you later. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. See you guys.
When we come back, we'll talk more and have a little bit more reaction to what Mike said. And Jackson's got something that he just is dying for me to bring up on air. Well, to do that just for you, because you've had a rough day, I will talk about this, even though it'll make me a total hypocrite. You can hear me be a hypocrite when we come back. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 104.5 The Zone.
Guys, if something is holding you back from performing at your best, it's time to do something about it with performance enhancement treatment packages from Edge Peptide. Whether in the gym or on the course, with Edge Peptide, hormone therapy can show you up and make you stronger. Yeah, feel better, recover faster, and stay in the game longer. Boost your energy, build lean muscle mass, and heal from those nagging injuries. And as an athlete myself, I know how those injuries can affect your game. So if you're struggling with joint pain, suffering from a recent injury, or looking to recover faster after surgery, Edge is your answer, and they have you covered. From peptide packages like PRP to stem cells or high film muscle stimulation, Edge is your exclusive Nashville Arena peptide specialist. So don't wait till summer to feel your best, and don't trust your health to some online pharmacy. And remember, Edge is your consultant, and you get a fee of free of $250, and it is waived in your initial order. So give them a call today at 615-724-1878. That's 724-1878, or you can go check them out online at edgepeptide.com.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here. 105 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. 615-737-1045. It's the last call for phone calls. We'll get to why Jackson is desperate to talk about a certain Instagram post. But first, let's go to Tony, who's been waiting patiently. Tony, you're on with Blaine and Zach.
Oh, yeah, guys. You've been talking a lot about the NFL being a team sport and not about the individual. I just want to get your opinion about Cam Ward wanting to being able to risk himself to set a personal goal of the NCAA touchdown records, but not willing to put himself at risk for a team goal of winning the game in the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Okay, I think that's a good way to phrase that question, Tony. Now, we've talked about it before. I don't necessarily have an issue with it because he worked really hard to get to that record. I mean, if you look at his past and the journey that he went through, but also how many players that have become great pros and great leaders and great teammates have opted out of bowl games completely. So I'm not too concerned with it, but I can see why someone would make that connection.
Yeah, I could say, yeah, you could have an issue with it. I think it's the mindset that we've been kind of groomed to just about players in general. And I think that mindset has kind of changed, no different than guys transferring year to year. Now, different schools were back in the day, it was looked upon and frowned upon. I think you must take your best interest at heart at the end when the bowl game doesn't matter at this point in time. He was just trying to stay in and get the record. As long as everybody knew ahead of time, I don't think I would have an issue with it at all because there's a lot at stake for him. And if he did play, so he did end up playing a half, and it seems like everybody knew what the circumstances were, and he wanted to be in the record book. So, hey, you could say that's individual, but at the same time, he was trying to meet him in the middle. And that's always tough when you're an athlete.
And also, he wouldn't have gotten to that record without his teammates.
Right.
So, it's all. I know it's an individual record, but it's really, that also says a lot about the people who caught all those touchdown passes.
What I've heard is that he said if we all play for a half, we will. If not, then we don't play.
There you go. So. Jackson, talk about this stupid Instagram post.
What is John Cena doing on Titans Twitter is all I have to say. He posted just this screenshot that apparently you told me is not AI generated by him, allegedly taken from somewhere on Titans Twitter, and it is the torch passing AI of Warren Moon to AI Cam Ward. I am so confused, but I do have a little bit of a conspiracy. Ross, if you could please. Thank you. So here's my little conspiracy here, very small, minor conspiracy. So Mike Borgonzi grew up in Massachusetts.
That's correct.
45 minutes from where John Cena grew up. They're about the same age, about 2 years of difference here. Is Mike Borgonzi a friend of John Cena?
No.
I'm not going to totally poo-poo this because there are a lot of people in football who love wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not put it past that maybe Mike Borgonzi is secretly a Cena fan. And
but he said, does he know him?
I mean, maybe they played against each other if they played a sport. I don't know if John Cena played football in high school or not.
Maybe they met each other at a high-profile Chiefs event, such as the Super Bowl or another event, became friends. I don't know.
Maybe they met. Maybe they met at Cheers in Boston and shared a pint and all this kind of stuff and just hung out. You never know. You just never know.
I'm putting my money on no.
See, this is now next time I see him, if I get a chance to ask him either at a camp or something, we're going to have to get down to business and find out if he actually knows John Cena. But are you glad that we got to talk about that?
Yep.
Okay, good. Whatever I could do to make you feel better on this show. Blaine, you asked Mike a question that you also wanted to ask me, so I figured we could get to it real quick.
Well, that is if you believe that really in his role at previous stops there, head coach Callahan, Brian Callahan, was really how much instrumental was he in the development of quarterbacks?
Yeah, I would say we would only really be able to say as far as instrumental in development, probably just, and I'm just saying he's part of the choir.
Right.
He's maybe not the conductor.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he plays first chair, you know what I'm saying? But of Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. Probably more so with Jake Browning, because I would assume that maybe the offensive coordinator would be more involved in this particular setup, their coaching setup, with Jake Browning's development behind the scenes. But I would say those would be the only two pieces of evidence besides really Will Levis that we have of him developing or attempting to develop any kind of quarterback in any capacity, because the prior stops are Derek Carr, Matt Stafford. Now, listen, Matt Stafford he only had 4 winning seasons as a Detroit Lion. Brian Callahan was on staff for 2 of them. That does not mean that Brian Callahan was a part, and we know that quarterback wins is not a stat. It just happens to be maybe happenstance. But when you look at what Matt Stafford did those years with Callahan as quarterback coach, it was 2 of his better seasons in his entire career. But again, it's Matt Stafford in 2017 and 2016, who's already been in the league for 7 or 8 years. Now, a lot of people will take this, Blaine, and say, well, anybody can work with Matt Stafford. Anybody can work with this person or that person or Derek Carr or Peyton Manning. Anybody, I could get off the couch and do it. I think it's a lot more difficult than that. But I will say, as far as development, the only true, I guess, evidence that we have is Joe Burrow, Jake Browning, Will Levis. 2 out of 3 so far. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't know what good quarterback play should look like, what good quarterbacks do to be better. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have advice, but to your point, development, it's still a lingering question out there.
Why didn't you include Mason Rudolph in there?
Oh, well, I mean, I consider Mason Rudolph, he's been like a 9-year pro.
Well, so was Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I wouldn't count that as quarterback development. That's what I said. I don't think Matt Stafford's quarterback development.
So they're not on the list.
Yeah.
So Joe Burrow, who was done by the head coach, or do you think it's done by?
Like I said, I
he
think
ran the meetings. That's for sure.
Yeah, he ran the meetings. We know Brian Callahan was the right-hand guy, but again, he's playing first chair. He's not the conductor.
Right.
So I'm with you. We don't know what truly he is. We know that he's been a part of good quarterback rooms.
But what did he sell?
I don't know what he sold, but I'm sure that's what he was told to sell. But like that means
you said it. You said that he came as a quarterback guru. And you said that, no. Let me go back around. Okay. That you said that is not true.
That is not true.
Right. So why is it true now?
I didn't say it was true now.
No. I'm talking about people. I'm just.
I don't know. I don't know. That's why I'm saying I'm hesitant. I have to see it to believe it. That's where I'm at too. All right, 3HL's up next. This has been Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone. And in the meantime,
and in between time, peace.
Two Rivers Ford announces employee pricing for everyone. Every tradesman, every dad, every rising star. You pay what we pay. Two Rivers Ford. Locally owned. American made.